Salutations. So yeah, welcome to Late Light Club. Light Club on Patreon, patreon.com/Taylor Durden. So I'll be doing this show every night from Tuesday to Saturday. And I'll do the normal stuff, take some questions at the end. Hey, how y'all doing, man? And just keep it live. I don't want it to be too long so I can keep doing it. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing too many hours in one show, and I could just do shows every night, and it would be just shorter shows, but just to give some constant content, and then kind of just touch up on little things from day to day, and do my best to keep things consistent. So, yeah, I guess let's get into it, man. I think just judging from the political landscape right now, and what all the pundits are talking about, it's pretty much the same. They're pretty much going over the same things. I mean, there's a few stories in the news that are, I guess, worth mentioning, but for the most part, everything is kind of centered around what's coming on November 1st, with the ending of the SNAP benefits, with the WIC benefits, and I mean, as it is right now, the air traffic controllers aren't being paid, so obviously it's going to affect travel. There's going to be some delays, or maybe people will just miss their flights altogether. So I just wanted to go into some of the detail of it, I guess, just to lay out what's going on as far as the conflict, where the rubber meets the road, where the epicenter of the conflict actually is, legislatively. So basically, it's a stopgap bill. You have different periods, and the whole funding of the government is a scam in general. But you have different periods of the year, of the fiscal year. They have stopgaps and bills to perpetuate the government, and then usually at some point, eventually, they have to do an omnibus bill where they set up a budget for the government for a longer period of time. So there comes a time where we reach this point right now, which is a stopgap, a point where there's no funding for the government, and there's only supposed to be this little period where they maybe fund the government for 60 to 90 days, and then they come back to the table again for an omnibus bill or another stopgap bill. And this is just perpetually expanding the debt and creating unnecessary spending, and what they call pork barrel spending in politics, where, again, people are stuffing as many little things in the bills as possible to get, because if a bill gets passed in D.C., they want to throw as much legislation on the coattails of that bill as possible so that they can all money launder and pay their own, their affiliates and, their donors, and, just get the kickback flow going or continuing. So we reached a point where, we're in the stopgap period where this is why it's easy to kind of blame the Democrats, because the issue is a short-term plan to fund the government, but they want to stuff something massive into the short-term period. And during COVID, you had basically a relief package for medical rates, where the prices of medical assistance and whatnot was brought down because of the emergency situation, supposedly, right? So it was kind of like an amendment to the Affordable Care Act. And so since that has been essentially dismantled, or, pretty much reduced to nothing, there is this, I guess, idea from the left where they feel like we want to continue this these rates, these COVID crisis rates for medical expenses and medical bills. So the left is using this period to play political football, to say like, oh, we want health care for all Americans, and then they can say that the right is trying to raise rates. But it's not that they're necessarily trying to raise rates. They just want the rates to go back to what they were pre-COVID. And that will hurt people, obviously, you know what I mean, because people are more broke than ever. And then we've reached a point with the inflation, the bite back from the inflation, from all the money printing during, the COVID phase, which is got a lot to do with Trump. I think Trump printed a massive amount of money, or under his administration. Obviously, he's just a puppet. But I mean, during that administration, a lot of money was printed, and I think it was like a third of all money ever created was created during that COVID pandemic. I have to Google that, but I think I think it's something along those lines. Something exorbitant amount of money was printed in that phase. So the inflation is just killing the market, killing people in general at this point. And the supply chain, like Thomas Massey just recently said, that the supply chain, that the breaks or the hits in the supply chain that happened from COVID, they took 2 or 3 years to really start to hit the system. So now that we're 4 or 5 years in, going on 6 years since the beginning of the pandemic, those problems have been exacerbated, and now we're really feeling the inflation, and we're really feeling the supply chain woes that are only going to continue. I mean, I don't eat beef, but I mean, you see the beef prices are up, and again, you got basically, it's no different whether it's left or right. Like it's all some sort of redistribution of wealth, however you want to play it. And they've been subsidizing farmers for a long time. Last administration, the 2017 and 2021 Trump administration, he raised the tariffs on China. You had the little mini trade war then, and then supposedly he redistributed the money that he got from those tariffs to the farmers to subsidize them, to keep them afloat, and basically kind of bought. They're buying votes. Everything they do is essentially buying votes. So, this is a heavily subsidized government. If you look, if you read the Tao Te Ching, it was just, it's just saying like the more suppressed the people, the more crafty and, wicked they become, and the more they depend on the government, the more subsidies, just more subsidies beget more subsidies. So, yeah, you create a more and more dependent nation, and everything is pretty much propped up by the government. And the government has to in turn steal more from its population, as well as steal more from other countries. So, to go back to it again, the government, they need a stopgap, short-term measure to kick the can down the road. I think we're 38 trillion in debt, and I think it's $1 trillion a year in interest payments. Who do they owe that interest to? Obviously we go down that road, but I think a lot of people already know. And a lot of it, when it comes to the healthcare issue that the left is pushing, obviously they want healthcare, universal healthcare for illegal immigrants to have as many migrants here as possible. Because on the left, you got the tiny hats on the left. They like to have as much illegal immigration as possible. If you look at like the NGOs, the Catholic charities, a lot of the people that are the vector points for the illegal immigrants to get into the country when they were coming in by the millions under Biden, and throughout history, the boards of these Catholic charities or NGOs are a lot of them are tiny hat people. So the left is, they're pro immigration in that respect, and then the right destroys countries, which causes them to want to immigrate. They go in there and you destroy Iraq, you destroy Afghanistan. You're gonna cause these people to leave. They're gonna flee. I mean, it's not like the left doesn't destroy countries too. Syria collapsed at the end of the Biden regime So you're going to have even more Syrian immigrants fleeing because they installed an Al-Qaeda dictator, the West did. They installed him into Syria. So, you have the tiny hats on the right that are so-called neocons, which is just liberals from the 50s that got supposedly mugged by reality, and they became conservatives, and they're classical liberals, really. The neoconservative is the classical liberal. So that's the right-wing tiny hats. They go in, perform espionage, collapse countries. I mean, it happens on the left as well. I mean, the Arab Spring was under Obama, so, it's not like it's a left and right thing. It's not absolute everything I'm saying. They're both garbage. But that's the common trend, is that the right destroys the countries, the left welcomes the people into the countries, because you got to think about it, like, the lockdowns and all of that happened under Trump, no matter how you slice it. I mean, Brazil's government was right wing, but they never locked down, they never forced the vaccine, and that's probably why the president at the time is now being arrested. I think he's getting like 20 something years. Whereas like Trump played ball, there was mass censorship during the Trump regime, and unlimited drone strikes, and so I can't really say that one is better than another, but you got the tiny hats on both sides. So, like, the tiny hats on the left, they love the immigration. The tiny hats on the right, they love to destroy countries and nation build, what they call neocons or whatever. And so I don't really, it's two wings of one bird, but for the sake of the conversation, we can go into it because it's compartmentalized, and the average lefty, they probably don't even know the Republicans. They don't know the Republican rhetoric, talking points, really. They might know, like, the surface level stuff. And then they might know some idiots that are Trump supporters, you know what I'm saying? And the same thing for the right. They know some idiots that like Biden and Kamala and Obama. And, you're dealing with a very dumbed down population with artificial intelligence. They're artificially intelligent. They've had fake history installed into them. So it's easy to get over. They don't know the history. So when it comes time for these moments like now, people don't know what's going on. They think we just arrived at this point where they're just going to cut off the funding. But what's going on is the left, again, at a compartmentalized level, they're using it to try to pass, use this small grace period to try to pass something way too big, for this time period or for this legislative phase. So it's just never going to happen, especially with the right being completely in supposed control, in the theater, the political theater. They're in control because they have the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, with Trump being president. So the left, I mean, at some level, it's a lot of moving parts, Like, a lot of people want the guaranteed money. It's just like the vaccines, a lot of people got guaranteed money when they got the government contracts to produce those vaccines. And if you change the rates on medical expenses, medical bills, who knows how people will respond. You're going to have a lot more medical debt being bankrupting people, and people just forfeiting and not paying it. So, maybe there'll be less customers, maybe there'll be less money and interest coming in for big pharma, what have you. But a lot of it, when they're arguing for healthcare, a lot of it is SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants. So the cost of those will go back up to what they should be, I guess you could say, after, or now, from this point on, since now the clock has ran out on the COVID measures where the prices were suspended at a lower rate. So that has ran out, and now the SSRIs, the prices are going to go up, and everything will probably go up. I mean, abortions will probably cost more, and so that's a big deal for the left. They'll go to bat for abortions and psycho pills, crazy pills all day. You know what I mean? Like, so on a ground level, you can see how they can animate a section of the left or the right wing based on whatever is going on in the popular culture. So right now, obviously, they can go to bat. They can say like, "Oh, we want we want health care for everybody, for illegal immigrants. We want to keep the illegal immigrants here, so we want to keep the universal health care as much as possible. We want to stuff that through with this bill. We want to make it possible for illegals to get health care, and we want to make SSRIs cheaper, make abortion cheaper, and keep that that Ferris wheel going." So that's kind of and then also have the bleeding heart liberal take where people the mothers on WIC, and then all the kids and elderly and disabled on SNAP, they're not gonna get fed, all of that, right? So that's all gonna that's their take on it, and the right is like, we don't want to pay for illegal immigrants, and I think a lot of people that are working class people are gonna ride with that idea, especially if they're not getting food stamps. They're like, I'm not collecting food stamps. I don't want to pay for illegals getting health care. I don't want to pay for people's abortions, or subsidize basically people's abortions and SSRIs, And I think that it could be like a crazy, I don't want to say zombie apocalypse, but it could be like a boiling point for a certain section of society that depends on SSRIs. Because if they can't get what they used to get, or at the quantity they used to get them, the false equilibrium, the false stasis, the false peace that a lot of people are experiencing in society, that false sense of, just sedation, that will be removed. And I don't know how that's going to play out in society. I know it's probably not going to be good. Most people aren't going to resort to breath work and natural methods to, stabilize their nervous system and their endocrine system. And most people will never do that. They're never going to do that. People are always looking for something they can take and not something that they can give or create to restore their health. So that's pretty much the state of affairs with that. People just taking advantage, of the political football, of the sensationalism that can be created around the topic of people being starved out, people not getting health care, single mothers not getting WIC, babies not getting their WIC benefits, stuff like that. And, objectively, it's going to suck for a lot of people. It's, like I said, it's going to affect everybody, no matter who you are. Unless you're super wealthy, if you're making over $200,000 a year, you'd probably be okay. And everything above that, you'll probably be okay. But anybody making under $200,000 a year will feel it in some way, shape, or form. You're going to feel it some way or shape or form. Things are going to cost. Like I said, the grocery stores aren't going to just take that hit of losing anywhere from 6 to 28% of their sales that would have went to SNAP from the government subsidy, basically. They're going to have to account for that and raise their prices in other areas. So everybody's going to feel it. It's not like you just going to, these are the poor people, that everybody is going to feel it. You know what I mean? This is a completely propped up society, zombie fucking economy. So, everything is pretty much fascism at this point. It's not like it's an actual economy. There's been a complete merger between like tech and state, and big pharma and state, obviously military industrial complex. They're kind of all one thing. And big agriculture. They're kind of all one thing. That's the government, really. And that's pretty much, we're dealing with, like I said, like a neo-technocratic fascism. And that's what we're dealing with, and we're just going into another, the next phase of the process, of the meat tenderizing process. Pause. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of that on that situation. I don't want to like beat a dead horse. Obviously, my last two videos are about the government shutdown. I just wanted to, I guess, preface with that, because I know that's like, as far as other little things on the news, I seen they had the AutoPen scandal again. If you don't know the AutoPen thing, it's like people were just using the rubber stamp to pass bills. My bad, man. My Starlink smoking me. Elon smoking me. So anyway, Biden was out of his mind. He wasn't there. And people, the the White House, the chief of staff, and then they probably were the ones that were just rubber stamping all the bills. I don't know exactly who was doing it. I mean, again, it's just like if you had somebody's signature with one of them ink stamps and you just, signing checks that way. That's kind of what was going on. And so they're saying that all these pardons and whatnot and all these different things that was passed during the Biden administration are a result of the auto pen and they should be null and void. I mean, maybe they do nullify some of the legislation and some of the pardons, but I really don't think anybody's going to be arrested because, as soon as Pam Bondi gets to talking about it, she said, like with everything, with the Epstein stuff, she was just like, oh, the files are on my desk, we're reviewing it. That means it's pretty much in the black hole. It's in the memory hole. So it doesn't exist anymore, if it ever did. The evidence or whatever. And it's political theater, man. And they always just got to keep you. It's like watching any series where you're just like, oh, the next episode, I can't wait to the season finale, of the fiscal year. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like where we at. I don't think anybody's going to be arrested. I know they got Brennan and Comey. They indicted them. But the fact that they didn't perp walk them, I don't know if they got mug shots. Maybe they did, but I just don't think anything's going to come of it. Just like the same thing with Trump getting arrested or whatever in Atlanta. I don't think, this is an in and out procedural thing. It's not really like people actually getting arrested and held without bail or, going through military tribunals or anything like that. They're not. I don't think anything's going to happen. By the time this shit gets pushed forward through all the different cases that are being brought, because it's going to probably, that type of thing would go to the Supreme Court. It wouldn't be, I don't think it would be a regional court that would be able to, pass judgment on that. So I think it would probably go to Supreme Court, and there's so many cases being brought at once that it would take years for it to actually go through. And then depending on how shit goes, I mean, if you get food protests, civil unrest, and another war possibly with Venezuela, and maybe a false flag attack during these riots and protests, because again, the war in Venezuela, they can say it's about narco trafficking, but Venezuela is a small percentage of the trafficking into America. Most of it's coming through Mexico, and some of the product might be coming from Venezuela, but most of the fentanyl is produced in China, shipped to Mexico, and brought across. So if they really have problems, they will go into Mexico and handle that. If they're treating cartels like terrorist groups. But I don't think anything will happen because, again, the president of Mexico is a tiny hat, Sheinbaum. And then the reason that Venezuela is being targeted is because they don't acknowledge Israel. They don't acknowledge them. So I don't think it has anything to do with them being... And then Colombia, too. They're saying there might be a war with Colombia or a conflict with Colombia. Which would probably just be some sort of siege or trade war, or which would just make prices go up for people, regular people, and for the world. Venezuela being a big oil producer, they're just gunning for that golden oil. No different from Bush, man. So he's Gianno Bump, George Bush and Donald Trump in one. Gianno Bump. So I think that he's just a puppet. He does what they say, and Venezuela doesn't acknowledge Israel. And they have gold and they have oil and other resources, and they have positioning, and they're in this hemisphere. They're not far to reach. And if you attack them enough, I mean, at some point they might attack back or have a low-level attack, or you can just false flag yourself and say it was them and say that it was Russia that gave them weapons to do it because they're a Russian ally. There's so many different ways they can play it. I mean, they got a lot of cards they can play to play people. So I think it's kind of endless how they can pivot in the situation, but I think that's something that you could expect. You could expect some sort of AI bubble crash because so many people are investing in AI or making out. It's kind of like a Bernie Madoff phase of AI because not all these companies they're gonna get bought up or fall off. A lot of the AI companies are gonna get bought. If they're any good, they're gonna get bought up, and most of them probably frauds. You know what I mean? And they're gonna fall off and embezzle a bunch of money and Ponzi scheme a bunch of people. And there's gonna be a massive AI bubble, just like there was a .com bubble. Just like it's just these constant bubbles. You had your recession in the late '70s, and then that created the environment where Reagan would come in and tax Social Security. Now you're getting taxed to work, and then when you get your Social Security back, you get taxed on that when you are 65 and you get your Social Security check. So that created that extra tax phase, and then like for 20 years they milked the population, and then they got rid of Glass-Steagall. The governments the Republicans and the Democrats got rid of Glass-Steagall, and I want to say 93 or 94, because the House was Republican, and they passed a bill to get rid of Glass-Steagall, which caused all the lending fraud, which eventually created the subprime mortgage bubble in 2008. And then obviously you get the .com bubble in 99, 2000. So you get these constant bubbles in society where there's this false sense of wealth, and it's just a massive Ponzi scheme. America's just a shell company for a big Ponzi scheme, money laundering scheme. So like so you got your .com bubble, the subprime mortgage bubble. You kind of had your like cannabis bubble. After that was kind of like the last bit of actual monetization of real goods in America, kind of in a lot of respects. To be totally real, like 2008 was like the beginning of the green rush. 2007, 2008, that's why you had shows like Weeds coming out and shit like that, normalizing the whole process of trafficking weed and stuff. And that was an actual good that America could produce. And, it became, multinational. Now you got Chinese and different people coming in and setting up grow operations throughout the country in Oklahoma, getting the permits and stuff like that. And so they blew the bubble. Now, now weed is not really much different than like corn. And it's just like any farming situation. So, the bubble burst. A lot of people created a wave off of it, and some people, they got a lot of money at once, and it wasn't like you had a generation of money where you could like gradually transition into other things. You know what I mean? So the bubbles are getting tighter and shorter. Whereas like from the 80s to 2000, you had like a generation to where you could transition your money into other things, and when the bubble burst, you could be all right. Then you had 8 years, or 94 to 2008, I guess. So you had 14 years in that next bubble wave, if you were getting into the subprime mortgage and the flipping of the houses and all of that, and just grifting off of the lending fraud. If you were doing that, then you had 14 years, a 14-year wave. And then I want to say like from 2007, 2008 to like 2016, you had a good opportunity to establish some money to try to, open up a business or do something else with the weed bubble. And then now we're in the AI bubble. I guess they've been producing it for a while, but the AI bubble is more, I think it's even more hyper bubble, even more concentrated bubble. You know what I mean? Like it hasn't been readily available to the public that many years, and I think it's gonna burst, and in that process, you're gonna go to war. It's just like they knew that the subprime mortgage shit was coming, so they had to go to war. It's like, we're gonna go in Afghanistan and Iraq. False flag, boom, Afghanistan, Iraq, and we know that the subprime mortgage, the bottom's gonna fall out the economy, and we're gonna have a massive bailout. We're gonna have to steal assets and use the military and industrial complex to prop up the economy. And It's a war economy. That's what it's always been. That's why the wars can't end. That's why they still sending aid to Ukraine. And Israel just struck Gaza again and killed like 26 people. Probably, a light day for them. But Trump goes off to Asia so he can kind of look like he don't know nothing about it. And then now they get free reign to just bomb, civilians in Gaza. And, maybe there was one dude that had a thought that maybe he would do some shit in Gaza, and they just killed everybody around him. But it just, it's all the war economy, and it's a parasitic economy, obviously. It's not economical. It's self-defeating. And so this is all built into the system, man. Anybody that has ever taken economics class, the Keynesian economic theory, you just have to keep printing more debt to keep the musical chairs music going. And I just think that we're going to go through a AI bubble and probably another false flag or war scenario. You might have some civil unrest, and then the right is so heavily aligned with Israel that I think that that's going to cost them the midterms. And I don't really know. They'll probably lose the House. I don't think they'll lose the Senate. I mean, they might, but I think they'll lose the House. And in 2028, there's really no good candidates on either side, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess there never was, though, to be totally real. It has not been a good candidate in our lifetimes. And probably in my father's lifetime either. So, and probably in his father's lifetime, there has not been good candidates. So, I mean, on the right, who you going to pick? J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, two neocon scumbags, and one's a big tech puppet, J.D. Vance. And on the left, who you got? Like AOC and Gavin Newsom. It's not looking good, but it's a toss-up, Honestly, I don't know. It depends on how crazy this shit gets in the next 3 years or so. If they're probably definitely going to lose the House in 2026 because of the Israel issue, which will lock up the government even more. It'll be even harder to pass legislation from 26 to 28. So, I mean, this might just be the first phase. They might get through this lockdown period. And then, come 2026, you'll have a new House that starts, the elections will be in 2026. And then you have a new House of Representatives that starts in early 2027. And they're going to lock up any agenda the right has. And so you're not going to it's going to be hard to pass anything from 27 to 29, basically to January 2029. So I think this might be the beginning phase of of a shutdown. You know what I mean? It might just be like a taste of what's to come. We might have a 60-day thing where people have to go to food banks more, and you're in soup line, bread lines. It's like the Roaring '20s. It's like the Great Depression for a period. And then we kind of get back to a little period of like business as usual. And then I think shit will get dumb again. In this process, people are not going to forget that quickly, in the 1 year until the midterm elections. And then they'll probably try to pull some shit. Because you got to look at it like when you're losing power, you're going to just gun and do whatever you can in that last phase. So I think 2026, the right will know that they're probably going to lose the House. And this is their last chance to like kind of have free reign. It's like their last year of kind of, fucking the left and fucking anybody else that disagrees with them in Israel. And the thing is that AIPAC spent more money on liberals than conservatives, because most conservatives they roll over. They don't even have to spend as much money to get them on board. With the left, you got to buy the politicians. You got to spend more money to buy the politicians because a good portion of the far left does not like Israel. So they have to spend a little bit more. There's more money spent on the left. So it's like left or right, you're still dealing with AIPAC and Zionist groups. So Zionist packs and stuff. So, I mean, I think that you're just going to have a seizure of the government in the process. And I don't know. Maybe the shutdown could just continue through that whole phase. It could go on until the midterms, and then the midterms hit in 2026 in a year, and then you have a lame duck period, and the shutdown could potentially go on from now until, because if it continues on, 100% they lose the midterms. 100%. So that means the left gets the House of Representatives come the start of 2027. So the shutdown could go on from now until then at the longest, I think. But they might have a period in between to try to make people forget. They might try to do what they got to do to try to make people forget come leading up to the midterms. I don't think that they would let it go on any longer than the primaries. That would be crazy. That would let you know that the gloves are off, though. If we reach May of 2026 and we're still shut down, then it's bad. It's a bad situation, because then they don't give a fuck. Then that's a signal of them letting you know, like, they got other things up their sleeve, and it don't really matter that they're going to lose political standing on paper. Because 2026, the primaries start in May, and the elections will be in November of 2026. So they want to get this shit resolved before May if they want to play political football. If they're on some strong arm shit, the gloves are off, we're going to know in the next 7 months or whatever, right? That's 6 months. 6 months basically, right? 5 months to May is basically November. 6, 7 months. So in that phase, I think people will, if we're still shut down by then, it's bad. And it will continue to go bad rapidly. And if there's been a break in that period, you can pretty much bet that it's just a reprieve to get your shit together, and people need to get their plans in order for 2027, because there's going to be another seizure of the government where there will probably be another shutdown. Because you got to look at it. Look at the history. In 2018, Trump lost the House. That was his midterm, because he got the presidency in 2016. They won the election, and he took office in 2017, and then 2018 is when they lost the House, because he had the 3-car model. He had everything. He had the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2016. And then they lost the House in 2018, which December 22nd, 2018 is when the last longest shutdown started, because he lost the House. So in that lame duck phase, he could play that game. The lame duck means the new Congress hasn't come in. So during that, because the new Congress takes office in January, like January 7th for the House and January 20th for the president on presidential election years. So the new House hadn't taken office yet. So December 22nd, Trump initiates the last shutdown, 2018, because they lost the House. So I think that's kind of that's the crossroads we're really faced with. If we're still shut down by May, people they really need to humble themselves and start focusing on contingency plans yesterday. You know what I mean? Because it's only going to get bad. But if they get something situated by the holidays or before May, by tax season, if they get something situated, where they get the government funded by tax season, then you can bet your bottom dollar that when they lose the midterms in 2026 and the Democrats take the House at the beginning of 2027, the Democrats will not let any legislation through. They won't let any bills through that don't appease their base. And it's going to be too far left for the Senate and for Trump. And they won't have a big enough majority in the House to strong arm anybody or impeach or do anything like that. So you're going to have another seizure of the government. You're going to have another government shutdown come the beginning of 2027 into 2026. That's the best case scenario that I can think of, that we can get some reprieve where people can get their crazy pills and they can get their food stamps, and the government can go on being subsidized for a few more months. And then, then we're going to the political season of the midterms, and there won't be such harsh rhetoric, and they're not going to take as many leaps. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to do so much right around that midterm because it risks the elections. So that when we get from May 2026 on, the political rhetoric will probably tone down and become more to the center. It won't be so right and left. You know what I mean? Because it's all fucking theater and it's disgusting to watch. You know what I mean? After watching enough cycles at this point, it's just tough to watch. You know what I mean? Because they're all lying and they're all afraid. So, that's why you would lie anyway. It's just fear. You know what I mean? You think that the truth ain't going to get you what you need to get. What you think you need to get as far as protection and security. So, that's just, my view on it. Politically, I think that's the landscape right now, where we're at. And I do think that Israel probably will go back and at some point, I think because Mars about to go into retrograde again or something like that, I think. I forget. I think there's another retrograde season coming up soon. And I do think that Israel is going to go back into Iran, another conflict with Iran in the near future, because they've kind of held off on Gaza a little bit here. I mean, they did bomb the shit out of them today, but I think that they're more so regrouping. They withdrew a lot of the ground troops, and they just have a perimeter now. They're not really in Gaza like they was. And I just think that it's a citizen infantry. You're forced to do, you have conscription. Everybody got to do 2 years if you're an Israeli citizen. It's not like America. So anybody that's like in constant war mode, they're just a citizen. They're like, fuck, I don't want to be in this shit. I want to be in Gaza on the ground. So they got to like give the troops, their citizenry, a reprieve, a little break. And that's what I think this period is right now. They'll bomb a little bit, but I don't think they're going to go in physically on the ground for a little bit. I think they're going to focus on Iran, pivot to Iran, and try to undermine and go at it with Iran again, because that's the only check in the region at this point, because Lebanon and Syria have basically completely fallen. So it's just Iran, that's the last check on their checklist. And I think that'll probably happen, and anything can happen to maybe try to get America into it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a false flag. They might not even need to do that though, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some type of false flag to try to coax America into it, or coax America into supporting it, an invasion or regime change war in Iran. I think America can't really afford it, and it'd be taxing, and they want to pass off the region to Israel, and they don't really want to allocate too much assets and there's too many assets to that region when they got to focus on Taiwan and the East. And that's why Trump's doing this shit right now, making his rounds in Asia right now, trying to get leverage on China, supposedly, where they're getting more mineral rights and rare earths from the surrounding Asian satellite countries in Indochina and all, around the South Pacific and the rest of Asia, so that they can come to the table with China and have some leverage instead of just being asked out with his dick in his hand. So, at this point, that's what I see. I don't see them wanting to get involved in Iran, but I do think that it is possible. And I do think Israel could start it off and maybe do a false flag to get it going. I think it's more so about Venezuela, and that's kind of like the Russian connection, because they're a heavy Russian ally and a big oil producer. I think that is a bigger in. They don't like Israel. They're on Russia. They're a Russian ally, supposedly, and they could kind of say they're with Putin, and Putin armed them, and they bombed us because we was bombing their narco groups, and now we got to invade Venezuela. You know, they already got ships stationed in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is like a stone's throw from Venezuela. It basically is Venezuela. You know, you got warships right there parked in their front lawn. And so, at one level, they're just trying to stress the Venezuelan government out to where, because they got like a $50 million reward on Maduro's head. So they want to like get somebody, have a mutiny to kill him or turn him over, and without having to go in. So they just pressure him. They keep the boats parked out on the front lawn, and then, you know, keep bombing people. And the CIA has been authorized in the ground. Who knows what they're doing as far as espionage. So I think that, you know, they're just trying to get them to take themselves out, because that's a cheaper regime change, and it's a way to steal minerals and kind of prop up the military industrial complex a little bit. But I don't think that they're above going in on the ground. I really don't think that they're above it. It would be a more cheaper endeavor than going into Iran. It's way closer. And if they're, you know, if you're talking about like a competition with China, South America is kind of like the front line. South America and Africa are like the front lines, kind of, really, to be honest. Like the mining in Africa, the mining in South America, all the train routes, the Chinese, the Sinos, the Sinites, they're the ones, you know, establishing those, you know, routes and those mines in those countries. So the Belt and Road Initiative, all of that stuff, you know, that's a Chinese threat to American, you know, hegemony. So, you know, if any of that is even real, you know, you could see them going into Venezuela before Iran. But I wouldn't be surprised if both happen, and they just use Israel as a proxy, you know, by giving them weapons and bombing Iran. I wouldn't be surprised. And Venezuela, I'd be even less surprised if they go in. If they go in on the ground, I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't probably take so much. It wouldn't even. So I don't know. I see that shit happening, and it could escalate into a conflict with Russia. Not directly. I still think just to fund Ukraine more, to embezzle more money out of that situation, and to prop up the military-industrial complex. Because that's what's keeping the markets alive. That's the base of the stock market, is Lockheed Martin, Halliburton, Raytheon, all the defense contractors, the weapons manufacturers. If they stop having wars to throw weapons at, then, you know, that's a massive hole in the economy, and that's like the base, you know. And so if you remove that, you really don't have an economy. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with. You know, we want the music to stop. We want the wars and the bombs to stop. You know, we wouldn't want to spend, I forgot, they spent like $80 billion or something supposedly between Israel and Ukraine since 2023. Food stamps is $100 billion. So, I mean, you rather fucking spend $80 billion on food stamps instead of giving them anything. And, you know, I get that. The left, when they have that logical argument, I get that is a lot more logical. Like, yeah, I feel you. I'd rather feed Americans than bomb Gazans and Iranis and Hezbollah and fucking Russians. I'd rather, you know what I mean, give Ukrainians weapons to bomb Russians. I would definitely rather just people get SNAP benefits. You know what I mean? As we like kind of get off the drugs as a country. If we could do that, gradually get off the military-industrial complex, and, you know, but that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? That's, you know, we're dealing with a junky country at this point, and they're never going to stop the money printing, the wars, and the drugs and the food drugs. You know, big pharma and big agriculture. So that's what I see with that. I see Amazon just fired 30,000 employees at the corporate level and replaced them with AI. So that's just, they're letting you know how confident they are if they're doing stuff like that. And the clock is ticking on a lot of jobs. There won't be referees. There won't be, so many things will get replaced by AI, man. Police, a lot of police will get replaced. So many things will be replaced by AI in the next 5 years. And AI is super incompetent. I mean, I can ask the Google AI, it's not the best. I can ask the Google AI a question, they give me an answer, and then I ask the same question but in a different way, and they give me a different answer. So, you can't trust it. I mean, it was made by organic artificial intelligence, so it can only be a product of them. You know what I mean? The grafts and the parasites that made it, or that were the vector for it, for its upload. So, yeah, I think that's it's kind of it for the news. I know they're coming out with Grokpedia, or it just dropped. I think Grokpedia just dropped. It's just like the new Wikipedia. It's going to be a part of Twitter or X, whatever, and it's just, again, it's that whole monopolizing of things where X is going to be basically, it's absorbing all the Wikipedia pages and making a Grokpedia within X, so that, like, if anybody cites anything on X, it's also a website, and it'll be open sourced and people can edit it or whatever. But I think it's still going to be skewed and have a Musk and Tiny Hat slant to it. Because anybody that's been looking at X, the X feeds have been extremely Zionist in the last few weeks. So I don't see it. I don't see Grokpedia being so much different. You know what I mean? I don't think the slant on there is going to be so much different. The way that they try to spin the right is to say that the reason the left hates Israel because they're white tiny hats, and it's white versus brown, and so they take the brown side, and they're trying to lump pale tiny hats with all the other rest of the pale people, and and I guess they've been doing that. It's just like a repackaging of that, and so I don't know. I think that things being what they are, you just seen Musk chilling with Trump a few weeks ago in Arizona. So it's so much shit is theater. It's crazy. Even talking about it's kind of funny. But that's just pretty much what I see in politics today. That was politics today, man. But as far as the occult or the fake history, man, I was looking at something. I want to do like a segment every day on the news, and I want to do a segment on the old fake news. You know what I mean? Like fake history. I don't know what I would call, like fake history mystery or some shit, but I was looking up something else, and I think that's always when I find the best stuff. When I'm looking for something that I think I want to get, and then I stumble into some shit, like, hey, what is this? So I was looking at some American history in the 1500s, and there's a man named Garcia Lopez de Cardenas, Figueroa, whatever. Anyway, Garcia Cardenas, for short, right? He's born in 1500 or some shit, I think. And he gets to he's the first person to get to the Grand Canyon, supposedly, right? And that's like in 1540. And supposedly no one goes to the Grand Canyon for another 200 years. If you fucking believe that. 200 years, no documented expeditions to the Grand Canyon for 200 years. Really? From 1540 to 1740, none of the whole thing, wasn't it part of New Spain? So you're saying the Spanish went there one time in 1540 and was like, all right, we seen it, we good. How the fuck can they even say that they owned it or that it was theirs? How can they say, like, yo, how can the Spanish even be like, yo, we had this whole shit all the way up to Canada. This was all our land. But we only went to the Grand Canyon one time and we was there for 3 days. How's this your shit? How is this your land? How is it Mexico's land after that? Because you pass it off, New Spain passes it off to Mexico. How is it even you know what I mean? So I was going through the story of it, right? The history, the fake history, the fake old news. And, the guy, Garcia Cardenas, he is from the House of Castile. And as you know, the Castillos, they're intermarried to where they're basically Habsburgs, the bloodline, same inbred bloodline. You know what I mean? And I'm like, these inbred motherfuckers. You're traveling all throughout very rugged terrain with clothing that doesn't match the terrain. None of this history makes sense. You going through here and you wearing this dumbass conquistador shit in the Southwest. It's either hot as shit or cold as shit. You're not ready. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you're not doing well in that. You know what I mean? Put that shit on a day and walk from Mexico to fucking the Grand Canyon and see how you, any season, see how you doing. I don't think, you know what I mean? The whole shit don't make sense. But anyway, they were trying to find the Colorado River, supposedly, right? It's like two conflicting stories. They said they tried to find the Colorado River, and also they're trying to find the seven golden cities of Cibola or whatever. And I think that that's actually Jerusalem. That's the real so-called, that's the real Jerusalem. That's the real Zion. The seven golden cities, or that's the real land of the Israelites. The seven golden cities. I think that's what that is that they were trying to get to. It's just like Cortez was trying to find, and Columbus was trying to find Jerusalem in Florida and shit like that. I think a lot of this is a stretch, but there's a lot of truth to what they're saying. Like, they knew that the old world is America. They knew that this is where they had to go. If they wanted to control the world, they had to control the Americas. And like I discussed before in previous lives, that the invasion started from the West Coast. It didn't start from the East Coast. I think the East Coast was tougher to penetrate, and for whatever reason, you know what I mean. But the West Coast, I think maybe they got so decadent and so advanced that they fell, and they were maybe a little easier to invade. And I mean, because you look at it like, the reason I started this search was because the first person to get to California was supposedly a British dude. He got to like right above San Francisco to like Marin County, and he called California. That's where he landed. Drake. His name's Drake, right? So he gets to California and he names California New Albion, because that's like the albino. I don't know. I mean, that white. It just means white. Just like Candida means white. Candidates mean white. It means like pure or above. You know what I mean? So that was the 1500s. And I was like, oh shit. So Cortez didn't get to Florida until like the mid 1500s. So you telling me the English had already made it to California before that ever happened, before the Spanish even made landfall. And they got to California before the Spanish. The English did. They call it New Albion. So I think that none of it makes sense. The history is all bullshit. I think it started from the West, and they went right for the head of the snake, or maybe they had already went through a collapse period. They got too decadent, they fell apart, and then the riches, the gold, the golden cities and everything were there. And I don't think the gold yet was for aesthetic, because somebody sent me a link and they was like, talking about how beauty is better for sanity, the symmetry of things and everything, and having things being clean and beautiful, it better for sanity. And it's true, like it's true. Like, life is a pattern, the creative pattern. It's a pattern, and it's a perfect pattern, and it is basically the pattern of sanity. And if your architecture and your layouts are complementary of the pattern of creation, then it's just going to enhance your sanity. You know what I mean? And so the gold and everything, and all the jewels and gems and the crystals and everything, they had an aesthetic value, but I think most of it was just for the ethereal energy. That's why they came to California for the gold rush. And there's so much quartz in California, because you find gold in quartz. And I think that was just part of basically the electric factory, or the electric company, of the old world. The quartz being like a facilitator for the electrical ethereal energy, the quartz and the gold in conjunction, and the crystals just for sending messages and videos, memories, sending all of those things across the ether, and energy as well. So I think that there's an abundance of gold because there's an abundance of energy and technology, and the cities were all built up to where the cities were the size of mountains, because that's what mountains are. They're melted metropolises. So I'm looking at this. So I'm looking at the Drake thing, looking at the guy Drake from Great Britain. They came on behalf of one of the Queen Elizabeths, and called California New Albion, supposedly the first one. And I'm like, okay, boom, I got into that. I was like, what else happened in 1500? Let me see what Wikipedia has to say, what they had to lie about. And so they just didn't even bother to make up a lie. They were just like, yo, this dude, Garcia Cardenas or whatever, this dude with two last names, he, is fucking Ricky Bobby in reverse dude, Spanish Ricky Bobby in reverse. He was like, I'm going to get to the Grand Canyon. I'm going to go on an 80-day trek to get somewhere, stay there for 3 days and be like, find this river, not really reach it and quit on it and be like, this is our shit though. I'm going to claim it in 1540 and we're never coming back for 200 years. Doesn't make no sense, man. They either came and they stole shit or they came and they got defeated. They came and they were like, well, we're going to just steal everything and kill the people, wipe away the history, Or a little bit of that happened, and then they also got ran out in some instances. So, because I think they were being met with opposition, because like they call it the Tiguex or Tigüe War, and that was the war with the Pueblans of like New Mexico, and those are the people that live in those cliff dwellings. And if you look at like Montezuma's castle, which no one fucking tells you about. When they talk about American history, they don't nobody knows about Montezuma's castle in Arizona. You don't even hear about it. Or Montezuma's well, or Cliff Palace in Southwest Colorado, the biggest cliff dwelling in America, I think. In general, I think it's big. I don't know if it's bigger than Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is not that big though. I've been there. I want to go to Cliff Palace one of these days, but it's massive. And if you look at it, you know anything about meltology and the Meltrix, then you know what you're looking at. You're not looking at like somebody went up into a mountain and built a fucking city. The mountain was the city, and this is what's left of it. And so you look at like Montezuma's castle, you look at like the Pueblos in New Mexico, you can see like this is all part of a system of a bunch of metropolises that were interconnected, and part of probably a worldwide grid that at one point was in harmony. And that's the only way they can reach that level of technology is through, a great level of balance and harmony. And so the Spanish supposedly had this Tiguex War or Tigüe War. I'm saying Tiguex because you know how it's spelled, but I don't know if it's Tiguex. I didn't see how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. But they had a lot of opposition with the Pueblans, the people that lived in these cliff dwellings, and at different points they were losing battles and getting ran out. They had like a siege at one point of one of the cliff dwellings, and it went on for weeks and weeks, until they ran out of water, and then the people ran into a higher level of cliff, and then the Spanish just quit and just kept it moving and went to like Kansas, looking for another city. I think it's called Quivira. It was one of the 7 golden cities, and so they just quit on it, right? And at one point, they were fighting, I guess, and then they quit, and then they just never came back for like 40 years, like 39 years. They didn't come back. So I think they got their ass bust. And then 200 years pass, right, overall. You get into the 1700s. And then they say, like, oh, we're going to recognize Native American lands. And I don't think it's because they had a better relationship with these motherfuckers. I think that's because they let the Mongols and the Siberian types take over these areas and assume the identity of the actual aboriginals. And that's why in the 1700s you had this all of a sudden we're cool with natives now. You know what I'm saying? But the whole time they were cool with these supposed like Indios Amigos or Indios Aliados or whatever. Like, there was supposed like these Mexo Indians that was working with the Spanish to go in and fight the Pueblans and stuff like that. And the Sonorans, they call it the Sonoran Desert to this day in Arizona. So like, I'm looking into that shit and I'm like, that shit, this is, to me, it's making sense that like these people were also invaders. They were just working with the Spanish. Like, there was a collapse. You had an influx of like your Mongol Filipino types and your Siberians. And then, you had a lot of Filipinos getting brought by Spain as well, but they let them take over the area and assume the identity, they created a fake identity for them to say that they're the inhabitants of the Southwest in the 1700s. And I think it was probably a 200-year war that you don't even hear about. That's why nobody ever came back for 200 years. So we can all just, we can all project. We don't really, I don't really know. Somebody probably does know, but I think I can deduce that's probably what happened. That it was probably ongoing war and destruction and erasure of the true Aboriginals in the region. And so that's what I think happened in that 200-year period between 1540 and 1740. Because I think maybe that was just like a last vestige. And then shortly after that, 1740 to 1812 is pretty much a generation, 72 years, where it seems like a big reset was taking place. And, you get the Napoleonic Wars. You get the 3 Napoleons in that time. And Louisiana Purchase and all of that. And just the more carving up of America, the destruction of the real Egypt. All of that was happening in that period, following this 200-year period that I'm talking about, where there's a missing history, a massive missing history. That's what I think happened, and I don't think I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I think that's what happened. Anybody can say whatever they want to say, right? Because there's no, they supposedly don't have evidence, right? And who knows? Nobody went. Nobody was there for 200 years, even though there's springs and rivers and shit there, and people live there now. So why wouldn't there be people there then? Because we're in post-apocalypse now, so I don't know if it was even bad at that point, or as bad or as arid and barren as it is now. It might not even been as bad, because California wasn't as bad. It was more moisture and more lakes, and the rivers were bigger and more snowfall, more snow melt. So it was a more rich area. So just a couple hundred years ago. So I don't really doubt that 300 years ago that that maybe the Southwest was just wasn't completely barren. Maybe it was a little bit better. People live there now and it's worse. So I think that there was definitely people there. Just the history is lied about, and they haven't made up a history for that 200-year period. So 200 years of just missing history, which is crazy to me. And I was looking into the different expeditions into the area, and in the 1500s as well. Supposedly, right, the first African to ever come to the Southwest, right? They call him an African. He was a Moor. He was supposedly from Morocco. He was an Arabic-speaking black dude named Mustafa, but they called him Estabanico, Esteban, or, just the Spanish word for Stephen. And that's, again, another thing why I feel like there's so many cryptos involved with Spanish. Because if you look at modern Hebrew, they changing all the fucking B's to V's all the time. You know what I mean? All the time. Esteban. So now Estevan. They're constantly alternating the B's and the V's. And I think that's just another sign of some cryptos having an influence. Because it shouldn't be Tel Aviv. It should be Tel Abib. It shouldn't be Estevan. It should be Esteban. It should be Steven. It shouldn't be Steven. You know what I mean? To be real. But it is what it is. And anyway, this guy, Estebanico or whatever, this Mustafa dude that was the first black dude to go to the Southwest. He was a medicine man. And he supposedly got sold into slavery, and then they just was like, yo, you're going to be the leader. You're going to lead us into the Pueblan areas. And nobody knows if he died. They just say he died because they found some of his clothes. And I think that because, like, all right, so when the Teguex War happened, there was a tribe of Pueblans called the Tijuan people, and they got enslaved as a result of it. Again, it's just like King Philip's War. Whenever the Native Americans lose, these black people, the real Aboriginal Native Americans, so-called black people, when they lose these wars, they get enslaved, and then they get displaced, you know, and then they get replaced by a poser and or a hybrid, you know, because through the loss of the war, you had rapes and or women. It might not have been rape, you know. Women might have just been like, "Fuck it, we're just gonna be with the people that won," and it creates a lot of hybrids. So then you get like a altered native, and so I think that this dude that they're calling a Moor, this Arabic speaking guy, I don't know. I mean, maybe he was a Moabite, because Moors is just Moabites. You know, Moab is Utah. I don't know exactly his origins. I just know that they don't know if he died or not. They just say he went into a city and it was hostile, and they don't know. He never came back. I think he probably lost. His people probably lost the war. They needed him for translations and shit. And then they sent him in there. He's like, I'm gonna go in there, and then he was like, just say you kill me, and I get my freedom back, and I'm gonna just be absorbed and assimilated into some Aboriginals that are, you know, still lingering in the area. So every time I look at history, I'm like looking at these loose ends that they don't tie up, you know, and then also knowing what I know, I can kind of fill in some of the gaps. And yeah, I think that's anybody, if you got any information on that, 200 years of missing history from 1540 to 1740 is just egregious. You know, how do you even, when people think of like seven wonders of the world as Grand Canyon, people think of America, the Grand Canyon, one of the things, you know, when you go to the Grand Canyon, it's very little, it's Americans there, but it's mad people from all over the world there. It's an international location. So it's the biggest canyon on earth because it is, you know, the old world, the original old world. It's the original pyramids, the original Giza Plateau. So, it's just naturally going to attract and draw people. But yeah, that to me, that was, you know, a big red flag. Because I was just like, man, let me just see. I know about Drake. Let me see about what else happened in the 1500s. And they just tell you like, yeah, nothing happened between 1540 and 1740 in this whole area right here. This whole Southwest Utah, Southwest Colorado, Northwest New Mexico, Northern Arizona, nothing happened. 200 years, nobody was there. The whole Colorado River area right there, nothing happened. We would have no expeditions in there. What kept them from doing that? Doesn't really make sense, you know? And you got to think that at the time, the river wasn't dammed up. So it would be a stronger, bigger river. So none of it really adds up. And yeah, so that's the show for today, man. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll regroup. I'll go through these questions right now. And yeah, I have another one for y'all tomorrow. Just keep reloading that. I got some time. I would have started earlier today, but I was fucking beat, man, to be totally honest with you. I fucking laid down for a second, and I was looking at the, cause you know, cause you know the sports are fake news, and the pitcher for the Dodgers, the dude Otani or whatever, I knew that he had somebody gambling on his behalf, but I didn't know the details. So I was looking into it. I was listening to somebody talk about it, and I just fell asleep for like an hour. I was like, oh, shit. And then threw everything off for like an hour. But I'll be back tomorrow, strong 9 o'clock, West Coast time. But the dude, Otani, I think is his name. I don't know. He's a Hamite, though. Tall Japanese dude. One of the greatest baseball players of all time. And even though sports are fake news, you're still going to get people that are nasty. Jordan was nasty. I'm not going to take nothing away from Jordan, but he was gambling on himself. Just like Pete Rose was gambling on himself. Who knows how many people have been gambling on themselves in the history, but, people have been caught. Otani got caught and blamed it on his translator and said this guy was just stealing millions of dollars and betting on games. Otani's the best, top 5 maybe ever, probably, when it's all said and done. Top 3, I don't know. Nasty, right? He playing both ways like it's the 30s or some shit. And I don't even like baseball, but I can appreciate it. So like he only had like a few bad games, and those were the games that his translator bet on, and came up on. So sports are fake news, and I was just talking about that, and I was looking at the Chauncey Billups shit, and Rozier and all of them, the NBA dudes that was getting. I mean, this guy Chauncey Billups is the NBA Finals. He won it. They won the final. He might have been the MVP, or it might have been Rip Hamilton. I forget, but he won the finals before, bro. Did they win 2? Did anybody that watches basketball? I don't remember. Did the Pistons win 2 finals? I know they won at least 1 with Billups. I know they went to at least 2, I feel like. And LeBron put them out that one year. I know that. They won 2, right? They won 2. They won 2, yeah. Imagine winning 2 championships and then you become a coach. Yo, Tim, since you're here, I'm glad you're here. He's the coach of the Blazers, right? Big O went over there, right? Damian Lillard, right? He went back to Portland, right? Anyway, I mean, he's one of the greatest players of his era. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a champion, 2-time champion, and a coach. And he got one of the greatest players of this era, Damian Lillard, as his player, lead player. And he's gambling illegally still. They using what they was using, right, the see-through tables and everything. Yo, that shit is crazy, yo. That shit is another level. I don't know if it was him just being bullied by the mob. They were just being bullied by the mob. But just lets you know that there's widespread gambling. And the NFL put out a report recently. They was just like, anybody caught gambling, da-da-da-da. They wouldn't. Yeah, Dame's not in his prime right now, but he's nasty still. Don't get me wrong. He got injured, but he's still nice. But I'm saying, like, the NFL put out a report where there's like, anybody caught gambling, there's gonna be strict, repercussions. You wouldn't need to say that shit if you didn't know that motherfuckers was doing that shit. People are gambling. Your favorite player probably gambles or has someone gambling on their behalf. And I've seen a lot of fixed games in my life. Some I can recall, like the dates and shit, because they was so bad. Like the Ravens-Patriots in that year when the Patriots had a perfect regular season. That was horrible. Regular season game. Horrible ref play. Horrible fixed game. The Atlanta Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl fixed game. So many fixed games I've seen. Pats-Falcons. That's what I'm saying. Pats-Falcons, one of the worst ever. That was right before they changed the gambling up, though. Because after that, then you could gamble online mad easily. That was their last thrust to getting money that way. Now they don't even have to fix the games the way they used to. They can still fix them and get the money that way. But now it's like they kind of just set it up. Like they got the Chiefs into the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight year. They were not supposed to be there anyway. But they set it up, you know what I mean? So that from that point on, it's like whatever. You know what I mean? Like now, whoever wins, they win or whatever. We just let them play actual football maybe a little bit. But we got these teams shouldn't even be here, or at least one of them shouldn't even be here. This game shouldn't even be happening this way. And we already cheated our way to this point, so we got the money already. They already paid for the advertisement. You already showed up to watch the Super Bowl or whatever. So they cheat the whole season to set the shit up a certain way. And in 2000, I want to say that was 2017, right? The Pats versus Falcons Super Bowl. That was the last Super Bowl that was brazenly fixed in that way. Also the Eagles Chiefs was also a fix with that holding call in the last play of the game. I mean, there's a lot of fixes, but generally, now they don't even have to fix the whole game. They can fix a quarter and rob people of their money. Make a player play one play in the second quarter and then bench him from an injury or something or whatever. Like and that shit shift the whole gambling because people gamble over stats now. They don't have to gamble over the whole game. So, it's another level of fixing that I think that it happened and it coincided with AI. You can't fix games this well without AI. You need to really get the possible outcomes and to reduce it to something that you can manage and fix. You need AI. I feel like that. You would just need way too many people in on the scam. So I think you just need AI. And that's kind of where it's at, where sports are just fake. There's nothing you can really watch or turn to that's real. So that's why people should grow food, build their own house, and, learn how to do shit like that, because that's the only thing that's going to be real in your lifetime. You know what I mean? The porn is fake. The movies are fake. The history's fake. The movies are about fake history. The shows are fake. The sports are fake. The news is fake. The politics is fake. You probably got a lot of fake friends, fake coworkers. You might as well grow your own food and build a house. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably, you have something real in your life. You know what I mean? Actually have a real kindred connection in the process. You could, really build stuff, and build a so-called family. And that would be real. Everything else, man, is up for debate. You know what I mean? Everything else is like, I can't trust this shit to be real. It's too far outside of me. You know what I mean? I can observe it a little bit here and there, but ultimately it's just going to distract me from reality. And that's kind of where they want us. But, yeah. I do think at some level there's going to be a lot of people giving money to these food banks and stuff to try to, like, give you some heartfelt stories and stuff like that and shit like that and try to kind of deflect the situation and, some of the ancestral abominable acts. So you're gonna get your food bank chicken and shit like that, your food bank turkey for Thanksgiving. So just be happy about that. Motherfuckers took your great grandparents' land, but you get a turkey this Thanksgiving for free. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably what a lot of this shit was gonna happen. To try to like soften the blow of what is coming. I think November 6th is the day of the record for the longest shutdown of all time. And if we hit that point, I think we'll probably have a shutdown until at least Thanksgiving. Maybe they'll pass it on Thanksgiving. I don't think that they'll be in Congress, though. If they don't pass it, you gotta think about it. Like, they go on vacation crazy. Like, they go on vacation like they fucking rap stars. So Congress, they'll probably go into recess like mid-November. So really, we got like 2 weeks to get this shit passed. And if it's not, then you probably won't have it passed till maybe first week of December if you're lucky. And then what? Then from that point on, it's, they might kick the can a little bit, like I said, and keep it, keep this shit rolling, keep the whole Ponzi scheme kind of floating a little bit, the illusion of balance and safety to keep that going, that security, that entitlement to keep that going. But after the midterms happen and we hit that lame duck period from November 5th, 2026 to January 7th, 2027, once we hit that phase, then we're in it. We're in a serious seizure of the government. You know what I mean? The government is going to be in a state of paralysis because nothing will be able to move through. Nothing will move through the House, and you won't get anything passed. It'll be like political extortion, ultimately. So let me go through these questions. I see people left a lot of comments. Thoughts on World Cup taking place in the U.S. You think that might boost the economy? Yeah, they're going to have to do something about L.A. They're probably going to build that Palisades area up with apartment buildings and shit. And, I mean, if things get crazy, I do think that they're just going to have more military in the streets, especially during something like the World Cup. More National Guard in the streets. California's already talking about using the National Guard to pass out food bank food. So I think you're going to have a greater presence of the National Guard and the military if we are still in a situation like this come the World Cup. But again, you know, they gotta save face and keep up an image. So maybe things will be like copacetic for that period, for that World Cup period. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? Are the Sinites hybrids or clones? They all look like copy paste. Yeah, I mean, you gotta look at it like a lot of them is created through conquest. So it was just a bloodline of dudes, the Khans. They were just spreading seed without care, really. So you're not gonna get much in like too much deviation. It's not gonna be like individuals. You know what I mean? Like if you actually are an individual and you meet an individual and then you have a child that's an individual, you're gonna have distinct features, you know, in their physical appearance and in their personality and everything that set them apart, you know, as to individuate them. But if you're just going around slinging skeet everywhere, you're not, you know, you're in a certain state. You think about it, like, if you ever make art, right? If you make a song, then you make another song right after that song, and then you make another song right after that song, it's not enough of a space typically. Sometimes people have an abundance of creativity where they can have a phase where they create songs like a lot at once. But if you're constantly making like paintings or songs or something all in a one time, they're going to run together and be so too similar, you know, and because you're in that template that you're in that age, your body's in that template of, you know, that it regenerated from. And there's not going to be so much deviation from one creation to the next. Cause this is the phase you're in. You know, you're not like having a child and growing for 7 years and then you have another child and you know, and it's a totally different circumstance and it's bringing about different spirits and a different, totally, you know, different metaphysical and physical makeup because they're coming from different ingredients and a different state of you ultimately. So if you're just like in 1 year just slinging skeet, you know, every time you get into a new village you just sling skeet, then the children aren't going to be, they're coming from that state of consciousness and where you were energetically, you know, spiritually, rather, you know, programmically, where you were at that point. Like all of that is the ingredients that are being drawn from. So you're not pulling from, you know, a greater state of seasoning. Mind Unveil has a great YouTube channel that questions fake history. Also, what's your thoughts on World's Fair? Do you think that they had advanced technology there? Yeah, I think the World's Fair, I mean, that whole shit is bullshit, bro. Like, you look at the building from Chicago that is still there to this day that was part of that World's Fair. It's a permanent building. You look at the Buffalo World's Fair, the one that McKinley, the president, got killed at in 1901. You look. I mean, you just it's these buildings are made out of concrete and wood. They're not made out of plaster. You know what I mean? So like, if they call them temporary buildings, but today buildings that we call permanent are made out of concrete and wood. So I mean, I don't. I think it's all. This is they just. That's a poor lie that they had to throw in there. You know what I mean? And then they give you pictures of gray skies and scaffolding on the building. You know, maybe they did refurbish it, but they didn't create the buildings. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's called like the Science Building in Chicago. I forget what it's called, but it's the one building from the World's Fair that lasted. And they're all made of the same material, and that shit still stands to this day. And they're supposedly like temporary buildings. And they're like, oh no, they permanentized it. They made it a permanent building. Like, get the fuck out of here. You just put scaffolding up, took a picture. You know what I mean? Just like you go to the Parthenon in Greece today, it's scaffolding there now. You'd be like, look, we built the fucking Parthenon. No, the fuck you didn't. You put scaffolding up around it. You know what I'm saying? Tough love. Yeah, I think tough love is better because it's unconditional. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm down. Shoot me questions whenever, man. We go through it. What's up, Erskine? I hope Erskine's. I don't know if Erskine's still in here. I know he probably in Germany or something. What's up, Erskine, man? How you doing, man? How can we be sure that taxation goes towards any government-funded program? It could all be a farce, a measure of an alchemical enslavement without the change, but with the numbers. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a grift, man. You're not getting receipts, bro. No taxation without representation. They tax you on your income, and they're not saying like, yo, we took 1,000 so that we can make this thing better. You're just getting the shit taken from you. And they tell you how much they took. But when you buy something, you should have a receipt, a manifest of the items you bought or you paid for. And so since you don't get that, you're getting taxed without representation. So you don't know. Who knows? You know what I mean? Where the payroll tax is going, income tax is going. No one, you know what I mean? It's going towards the debt, probably a lot of it. And then military industrial complex. Going towards the interest on the debt too. Yeah, they don't even have to print money no more. They just add a comma in there digitally. You think it's gonna come back for Black Friday? I mean, that could be, man. I wouldn't be surprised, man. A lot of Black Friday is digital now, though. You know, years ago people would really line up at stores, but now a lot of that shit is digital. So I mean, it's almost like a non-event now. No, I don't think Grand Canyon is a bridge to Africa because I mean it could be a tunnel. You know what you're saying? I think there's definitely tunnel systems throughout the world. The whole world probably has tunnels connecting everywhere. Yeah, the new world is the old world. I think a lot of people, what they call beauty is just symmetry. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with symmetry. I think to be like lost in comparison is more so vanity. But I don't think there's anything wrong with symmetry. Question is what destroyed these kingdoms? They destroyed themselves probably. They probably and vanity and pride and parasites that follow those energies once you harbor them. It's just like a food that you can't process. You have to have parasites that can eat it for you. You start to harbor vanity and pride, you can't be yourself. You need to create an altar to process that energy. No, I'm not going back to school. Not for nothing like that. If I went back to school, I'd be a welder or some shit like that. I'd learn something I can actually physically do with my hands. Yeah, resets was probably did it. You know, they destroyed themselves though. Still, I mean, I still feel like even if there's a natural reset, people disrespected themselves and ignored stuff to where they were caught slipping, and then the natural reset destroys shit. And they didn't respect the natural order and cycles. It resets hit different in the AI area. Yeah. I mean, you just get fucking deleted, bro. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. I got deleted in 2020, and mad people say now regularly what I was saying then and got deleted for. Or what I assume I got deleted for, because I don't know what I got deleted for. I just woke up one day deleted. America supposedly established the laws from the people who were here before them. Yeah. Norumbega. You can look into Norumbega. Was a civilization or a society on the East Coast. Supposedly they started the Constitution and stuff. The resets are suppressed by chemtrails and radio emissions such as 5G. They are waging war against the traditional scale of global resets. I don't think that humans can even do anything about that. If there's a natural reset, I really don't think that. I don't think you can do anything about it but position yourself to endure it. I don't think you can prevent it. You know, you can maybe have a hot pocket, a spot where you can run to, like whatever, you know, parts of the melted metropolises that survive. I still feel like even if you go to a spot like that's like Petra or something, they survive. I still think it would be so hot that even if you weren't in a melted spot, you would still die. So I think there's probably spots on the earth that people had to go to for refuge that, because they knew the cycles and they knew which parts would be spared and which were designed to endure, that they could, go there, wait it out. Kind of like Tibet or places like that, places that like held on to knowledge. Different spots that held on to knowledge. Even, you know, Mecca, spots like that, they held on to knowledge throughout a reset. Some of those buildings survived. The Vatican, the Sequoia forest. You know, Sequoia trees supposedly been here since before Christ. So, you know, I think people know that they can go to these places in those times and that those places are unchanged. I think certain things have to be relatively unchanged. Even though California, the landscape has been changed greatly, I think that you still have the Baja Sea, you know, which creates the Baja Peninsula, which is the actual Red Sea. A lot of this stuff is still there, you know. Like when they talk about the Nile today, there's no way it could have been the biblical Nile. You know what I mean? And the reason that they say it could be the biblical one is because of climate change. Right? It would have to be multiple catastrophic events to make a 7-stream river turn into a single stream river. And it don't make sense. There's no way that Nile could be the Nile of the Bible. You know what I mean? You can call Nile just means river valley. So you can call any river valley Nile, but that is not the one from the Bible that they're talking about, which is the Euphrates, which is the Mississippi. And yeah, so certain things I think have to remain unchanged, and that's just part of the continuity of this chessboard or this grid that we're on. And it's just for continuity. I think everything would just collapse in on itself if there was not parts that would remain intact and have the integrity to endure timelessly. You know, so that the scripture could even reflect reality for it to even... Because you read the scripture, actually, objectively, you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely America. They're not talking about over there. They're not talking about the Eastern Mediterranean. There's no way the Mediterranean is a great sea. It's a pond. It's not a fucking sea. You know, it's not one of the 7 seas. And so the Pacific is the great sea, it's the greatest of the 7 seas. And so if you read in the Bible, you read in Isaiah, you're like, oh yeah, now this is the Nile, and the Mississippi is the Nile, you know. And you read in Exodus, you know, you're like, oh, the Red Sea is over here. California is Canaan, and the Levant is the, you know, the whole Pacific coast, and the Great Sea is the Pacific, and this makes sense. You know, all of this makes sense based on the descriptions. And otherwise, you listen to somebody tell you what the Bible was, then you will never know, and it'll be the way it is now. We'll be in this place now where people are believing in things that they don't understand, so they suffer. Shout out to Stevie Wonder. They say 5 eras of resets. So there are 5 natural resets, supposedly. There's a guy named Lucius Aurelian on YouTube that has a good breakdown of the 5 eras theory. You know, he's talking about, like, you have this pinnacle era and then different levels, and then you get like the Tartarian era that comes later. And then there's miniature man-made resets within, but there's 5 natural resets total, supposedly. And I think I can agree with a lot of that. At least 5. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I think at least 5. That's the cool thing, man. If you want to make a movie about, that's the cool thing about AI, is that you can give imagery to real history. If you wanted to make a movie, you could just use the AI and it would be very cost effective. And that way you can kind of compete, because it's just like when you make music now, how you got to have that digital sound to hit the atrophied ear. They're all used to the digital sound. You know, it don't hit the same. It's like drugs that don't hit the same. So when you hit them with that AI, it's like watching Iron Man for them, for the younger generations. So it's like giving the delivery system's the same. You're giving them a different nourishment on the same plate. Suppress resets from chemtrails, radio emissions. Yeah, that means they rode the Grand Canyon down to San Fernando because the oldest mission in the nation is San Antonio. Again, I don't think the Alamo and a lot of these structures and the Hearst Castle and a lot of these missions and stuff, I think that would probably, a lot of that stuff is probably remnants of the old civilization that they might have built and like made a composite structure off of. Billups started at Bronze Crib with the betting. Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, sports are fake, bro. I mean, comedy is cool, man. I think it's just like any sport. It's all about, it's like any game. It has a time frame. And everything is based on timing, execution. The shutdown is real in the sense that people do get their food from SNAP. You know, millions of people, supposedly 42 million, and 7 million from WIC. So, in that sense, it's real ramifications. I don't have any thoughts on 31 Atlas. Africa was settled later. Africa was one of the last places to be settled. Africans today are Asians. Those are the original Asians. A lot of them. Look at the Khoisan. You know what I mean? Those, you know, Asia's a big place. You know, a lot of people live in Asia today. There's more people in India, and it's just a part of Asia, than Africa. So, I mean, just looking at the people of Africa, I mean, some of them are the original Europeans, though. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are Hamites that were settled in different parts of Europe, and they got pushed into Africa. And it's all kind of Asia. I was having this conversation the other day. And they were like, well, we got to give it a different name. I was like, yeah, Africa should just be Southwest Asia. Shit is all Asia. It's all one landmass. You know what I mean? Europe, Asia, Africa is all Asia. or just call it, or call it all Europe or all Africa or Eurasia, Eurafrisia. It's all one thing. So, but yeah, Africa was settled later. But they went through their own reset and everything. They tried to recreate what was here and what was also in Asia. There's more pyramids in the Americas than Africa. And there's a lot of pyramids in Asia that they act like aren't pyramids and they call them mountains. And yeah. You just look at some of the artifacts that was left in Asia. I mean, it's supreme compared to anything in the world, really. Because Shem was in Asia, too. The Shemites was in Asia. The real Shemites was in Asia. And they were in, Mexico, America. The Asians we see today a lot of them are Grafs or Japhethites or Canaanites. Because you got to look, Ham had a son named Canaan who had a son named Sin. And the Chinese are the Sinos. That's why they call any Chinese war a Sino. It's like a Sino-Russo war, Sino-Japanese war. It's a Sino war. The China is Sina or Shina. They used to spell it with an X. It's all shit because, again, S and SH in Semitic language are the same character. They don't make another letter. Like, they don't have to add a H to get the sh sound. The letter itself that is for S is called Sin. Some Semitic language speakers, they call that Shin. Some call it Sin. So the Sinites, the Shinites, you can call it a Shinite or a Sinite or a Chinese, whatever. That's a Canaanite. So a lot of Asia is Canaan because the Genghis Khan was a Canaanite, and then you have your Japhethites, which is a lot of India and Iran and West Asians, Russians. They're part Japhethite, part Graft at this point. So you have a lot of mixed with Graft people because the original Russian is still a black dude. You know what I mean? The original inhabitant of East Asia is a black dude. It's not. But the original Sinites were still brown or dark brown. It's just that you had inbreeding and vanity breeding and then breeding with grafts and then reset after reset. People be sequestered. They only have so much to choose from. And then now you get like a bastardized, mutated Sinite and Japhethite, because again, Japheth has Gog and Magog. Ashkenaz is an extension of Japheth. So the Ashkenazis, the Mongols, are also part Magog because they're part Canaanite because they're Canaanites. They're from Genghis Khan, but they're also Magogs or Magogian, whatever. They're Mongol Canaanites. So Asia is, it's a really it's a diverse spot. If you look at West Asians like Uyghurs, the Muslims of Asia, they look like Irish people or mainly Irish. They look like really Western European to me. A modern day Irish, not like the original Irish, which was a black dude. But yeah. So when we're talking about white people, we're talking about generally West Asian genetics that crossed over into Europe, or what we're calling Europe, which is just West Asia. Far East West Asia. Central West Asia is where red hair comes from, blonde hair. The recessive traits, they manifested in great numbers there. They didn't start there because humanity started in the Americas, but they got an abundance of bodies there. And then it congealed into different genotypes like the Boudinis. And now you get like whole swaths of people that are redheads or blonde or blue-eyed or whatever. But You know, 600-700 years ago, that region was yellow and light brown, and some had blue eyes, some had red hair, some had brown hair, some had black hair, some had kinky hair, so it was more mixed looking 600-700 years ago. But now it's just been homogenized, and that's what you see before any collapse. So yeah. All right, I'll check the email. But again, I'll be back tomorrow. I don't want to beat a dead horse, man. I think we had a good show today. I'll come back tomorrow. I'm going to make it more and more professional. I was tired today. And thank you guys, man, for being here for the opener. I'm going to post this up on YouTube. I'm going to leave it up on my Instagram. I'll just keep doing these publicly. You're definitely going to have suicide rates going up. I mean, yeah, a lot of people dying in the Great Depression and the Roaring 20s. So, you're definitely going to have that. And if the SSRIs cost too much money because the medical bills increased during the shutdown, you're going to have people having psychotic fits and stuff as well. So it's a cadre of problems. And that shit is all very real in that sense. People became dependent, and we're dealing with real consequence because of it. But yeah, thank you all for coming in, man. Appreciate you guys, man. Even if it was just one of y'all, thank you. So thank you guys, man.